I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a doctor being treated for Ebola in the U.S. has died. He was already in extremely critical condition when he arrived. That story just ahead.
As President Obama prepares to announce executive action on immigration, we examine the legacy and impact of Proposition 187, or the Save Our State initiative, passed by Californians 2 decades ago. I'm Peggy Pico with that conversation and how a San Diego swimmers aquatic program is saving the lives of children with autism.
San Diego City Council is considering a landmark deal that could end a long-running debate over the city's sewage discharge. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. An Ebola patient flown to a Nebraska hospital Saturday for treatment has died. Dr. Martin Salia was receiving Z-MAP, the experimental drug made in San Diego to treat the deadly virus. Doctors say by the time he reached the U.S., his illness had done too much damage. Tracy Brown of the Associated Press brings us the rest of the story.
A Nebraska hospital says an Ebola patient being treated in its biocontainment unit has died. Nebraska Medical Center said in a news release Monday that Dr. Martin Salia died as a result of the disease. Salia contracted Ebola while working as a surgeon in Sierra Leone. He arrived Saturday to be treated at the Omaha hospital, where 2 other Ebola patients have been successfully treated. Ebola has killed more than 5,000 people in West Africa. Salia was a citizen of Sierra Leone. Tracy Brown, Associated Press.
The city of San Diego predicts it will have an extra $58.5 million to spend in fiscal 2016. The news comes from Mayor Kevin Faulconer's office. Faulconer plans to spend almost all of the extra money on infrastructure and neighborhood investments, as well as public safety and technology improvements. His budget, by the way, his budget proposal will be released in April. San Diego City Council approved construction of 175 single-family homes in Nestor on the site the former Marian Catholic High School. The property was a school for 47 years until the school was moved to a new site in Chula Vista. Once completed, the cost of the homes will range from $300,000 to $400,000. San Diego home prices are not going up as fast as they did earlier this year, but home affordability continues to be a major issue here. A new report finds San Diego is the second least affordable housing market among the nation's 25 largest cities. Interest.com says only San Francisco is less affordable. San Diego's median income is about 38% below what it would cost to buy a median-priced home. A 2-day White House conference is underway at San Diego State. More than 400 counselors and advisors from 32 states are on campus learning how to get more students into college. The conference first started at Harvard last spring with about 150 attendees. Organizers say school districts across the country need to increase the number of school counselors.
Right now, as a country, on average, you've got about 1 school counselor for every 471 students. That's twice the recommended rate. Nationally, or actually in some places like California, where we are today, the ratio is about 1 school counselor for every 1,000 students.
San Diego Unified's counselor-to-student ratio is better than California as a whole, but still way over the recommended level of 1 counselor to every 250 students. It's been 20 years since California voters passed the controversial Prop 187. Peggy Pico takes a look at its impact on the border region and the current immigration debate.
In 1994, Prop 187 tried to stop immigrants living in California illegally from getting health care, public education, and other social services, but the courts deemed it unconstitutional, and it never really went into effect. Joining me with the legacy and local impact of Prop 87 are San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez and Isidro Ortiz, professor of Chicana and Chicano Studies at San Diego State University. Welcome. And Isidro, how did Prop 187 actually come about, and who was pushing it forward?
187 came out of the battles over immigration that began in the 70s and continued into the 90s. The Republican Party was behind Prop 187, and in particular, then Governor Pete Wilson championed it and rode it to re-election in 1994.
So was was the push behind it actually, do you think it was a political one for re-election?
There was a lot of politics involved. The Democrats and the Republicans had been battling over immigration, and the Republicans thought they had found an issue, what they called a wedge issue, that could help them win elections.
No, it never really went into effect. It was deemed
right.
unconstitutional, yes. But it did have an impact when it came to Latino voters, correct?
Yes, it politicized an entire generation of Latino voters, many of whom began to vote Democratic, and ultimately then the surge in numbers and the turnout helped transform California into a safe Democratic state.
Okay, and Lorena, you were influenced by Prop 187 growing up with this. How did it influence you?
Well, you know, like a number of us actually that serve in the legislature now, we kind of tie our roots in political activism back to the passage of Prop 187. Many of us were in college and graduate school. And although we were born here, we had parents who had immigrated here. We had family members who may not have been here legally. And it really was seen as attack not just on illegal immigration, but on an entire immigrant community. Most of us came from blended households, from blended families, and if not, our neighbor maybe did, definitely somebody in our community. And so it was really seen as an affront to our entire community, and many of us decided then to go into public service.
And let's jump forward 20 years to this year. How has California's approach to immigration changed?
You know, it's amazing to serve in the legislature right now. This year I co-authored a piece of legislation to take the words, the meaningless words now of Prop 187 off the books. But if you look at how we treat immigrants, it's been a 180-degree turn, quite frankly. We welcome immigrants. We accept the fact that they're here. We have tried to make laws and pass laws, thanks to Governor Brown, who have to embrace the fact that we need normalized relations here. We just passed driver's licenses so that immigrants could have driver's licenses. We passed the DREAMER Act. We let DREAMER law students become attorneys. So we have tried to do everything in the state to say we are all one state, one community, and will function as such.
And it also, though, increased border security.
Well, border security has been increased from the federal level, absolutely. I'm not sure, you know, a lot of times people want to talk about border security, but I don't know how many more troops you could put at the border to change what has happened. What we're talking about is people who live here now, people whose families live here now. You know, there may be one member of the family who may not have proper documentation. And rather than rip families apart, what we want to see in California and ultimately in the United States is that families stay together, they're able to work, able to put food on the table, send their kids to school, access the American dream, and not be in fear that their family is going to be torn apart by deportation.
In Isidro, getting back to the political side of this, you said Prop 187 mobilized Latino voters, yes. But they're still not turning out in the largest numbers people would like here in the polls. Why do you think that is?
In part, I think because there's a great disillusionment about what has occurred at the national level. Latino voters turned out to vote for President Obama in 2008 and 2012, expecting that there would be significant change. And what has occurred, of course, is we've seen an increase in the deportations. So many of them have become disillusioned. And I think many are also wondering whether the vote makes a difference. So it's going to be difficult to overcome that, to convince them that, in fact, if they turn out to vote, that it can make a difference. I think in San Diego, the case is stronger because I believe that part of why San Diego turned blue was because of the upsurge in Latino voters as a result of 187. And here the impact of your vote can be seen a little bit stronger than is the case at the national level.
A little more immediately.
Immediately, yes.
And speaking of that, Lorena, the immigration, of course, remains this hot political issue at the federal and the local level. President Obama is expected to do this executive action on immigration. Do you think that'll change things? Do you think Republicans and Democrats will be able to come together maybe after this and move this forward?
Well, it doesn't look like it. It looks like Republicans are still going to fight this. In fact, they're threatening even a shutdown of government if he acts on his own. But it's something that needs to happen, and it needs to happen because it's not just immigration on its face. It's just not these families. It's our economy. It's the way we work as a nation. We know that even stronger here in California, but we rely on an immigrant workforce, and quite frankly, we can't continue to deport people, especially while immigration is slowed to the United States, because as agriculture will tell you, the tourism industry will tell you, they're hurting for workers.
All right. Well, we're going to be obviously following this as President Obama makes his remarks. State Assembly Member Lorena Gonzalez, thank you so much. And Professor Isidro Ortiz, thank you very much as well.
Researchers have identified a virus as the most likely culprit in a disease killing millions of sea stars along the Pacific coast. KPBS science reporter David Wagner joins us to explain. Now, this disease has been affecting sea stars in California for a while. Remind us just how.
Yeah, right. Well, back in the summer of 2013, sea stars with white lesions and these kind of curled limbs started appearing in the Pacific Northwest. People said they looked kind of deflated, and within a matter of days, they would completely dissolve, dying from something called sea star wasting syndrome. And the disease spread fast, traveling as far south as Baja California and as far north as Alaska. San Diego only has small communities of sea stars, but even they were affected by June earlier this year. In some areas, as much as 98% of sea stars have been wiped out. It's the largest marine epidemic ever recorded.
Wow, and no one actually knew what was causing the disease?
That's right. I mean, until now, it was kind of a mystery. Some researchers suspected it had something to do with warming waters or ocean acidification. And it may still be true that environmental factors could be playing some role, but they wouldn't explain why this disease has been showing up even in aquariums, where sea stars swim in tanks with stable temperatures and pH. That pointed to this being caused by a tiny pathogen brought into the aquariums along with ocean water.
So, David, how did researchers pinpoint this single virus?
Well, they looked at viruses found in sick and healthy sea stars. Through DNA comparison, they zeroed in on a single virus, and to be sure that they'd identified the right one, they injected this virus into healthy sea stars, and sure enough, the sea stars developed wasting syndromes within 10 days.
So now they know what's going on. What can they do about it?
Well, not much. It's not like we're going to go out vaccinating every sea star in California. And the researchers I spoke to say sea stars were pretty overpopulated in these affected regions to begin with. So this could just be nature's way of keeping populations in check. One thing is clear, though. In places where sea stars have been decimated, their prey are going to flourish. So expect to see a lot more sea urchins and mussels.
KPBS science reporter David Wagner. San Diego City Council is considering a landmark deal to end a long-running debate over the city's sewage discharge. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says it gives the city a break on federal standards in exchange for creating a new source of drinking water.
The plant is wedged onto the ocean side of the Point Loma Peninsula. Supervisor David Huntemer says the facility processes roughly 180 million gallons of sewage a day.
From the time it comes into the plant all the way to the ocean, the liquid portion, the water portion, is never pumped.
It's gravity fed.
It's all gravity, and that's what a wonderful, wonderful design.
The plant is the heart of the region's sewage system, but it started out small when it opened in 1963.
It had 6 sedimentation tanks. It had a small grit building down there, and that was about it.
The facility now serves 2.2 million people in 16 municipalities. Sewage is treated here, then discharged into the ocean through a 4-mile-long underwater pipe. Over the years, improvements at the plant have used up every bit of available space.
We've added more digesters. We've added a biosolids holding tank. We've added several more sedimentation basins. We're adding a new grit system, so we're constantly doing that. And we're also fine-tuning our process.
But even with all the improvements, the facility falls short of clean water standards that every other sewage plant in the United States meets. Ann Sasaki is an assistant director in the city's public utilities department.
It is the only plant in the United States that doesn't meet secondary standards. However, I want to make it clear that the city of San Diego and this Point Loma plant are meeting all regulations of the Clean Water Act.
That's because EPA waivers allow the San Diego plant to operate under special rules. Clean Water Act rules require treated effluent to meet 3 benchmarks. Sasaki says San Diego's effluent meets pH requirements.
We're very close to meeting secondary standards for total suspended solids, but we don't meet the BOD standards.
BOD is biochemical oxygen demand. San Diego's problem has always been that there's no room at Point Loma to build the multi-billion-dollar aeration ponds that would replace oxygen that treatment takes out. But city officials have long argued the standard shouldn't apply here.
When the Clean Water Act was written, it was written as a one-size-fits-all. So for treatment plants that discharge to rivers or streams or inland bays, they have the same requirements. And in reality, sometimes the one size fits all. It doesn't work.
Sasaki says years of mandated monitoring by the Scripps Institution of Oceanography prove that there is no harm to the environment.
And the whole idea of monitoring the marine environment is to make sure that the plant and the effluent it discharges into the ocean doesn't do any damage to this area.
But spending billions to put oxygen into treated sewage that'll be dumped into the ocean was always a tough sell for San Diego officials. So the city is taking another approach. The city, business groups, and environmentalists got together and decided to pour the money into water recycling. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer says the drought puts things into perspective.
The right thing to do from a water independence standpoint, the right thing to do for our environment, so less is going out to the Point Loma outfall, and probably most important, it gives us certainty.
Certainty comes in the form of a drought-proof water supply. The deal would modify the Point Loma discharge permit so a waiver is no longer needed. In exchange, the city agrees to create 50 million gallons a day of potable water by 2023, 83 million gallons a day by 2035. And Sasaki says that would be done by diverting sewage before it reaches the plant.
It's drains from your home to treatment, to treatment, to treatment, treatment, put into a reservoir, treat it again and again and again, and then distribute it to your homes.
The idea gained a foothold back in 2010 when the city agreed to do a water recycling study. That was one condition for the last 5-year waiver from the EPA. San Diego waterkeeper Matt O'Malley says the study found that the diversion plan could work. He says the drought added the exclamation point.
People realize how serious this is. I mean, with climate change coming about, we're going to see longer droughts, more frequent droughts. So we need a water source, and there are very few options out there.
O'Malley says the city is committing to recycling 83 million gallons of water a day, but he thinks they'll do more once they see how well it works. Meanwhile, he says the environmental community will remain vigilant, making sure the city keeps its promises.
It's important for people to know that in this agreement, we give up no rights to enforce the Clean Water Act. If there's any degradation of the environment, we have the right to enforce, and we will do that if we need to.
Federal officials have been briefed, and Regional Administrator Jared Blumenfeld says the plan could be good for the city and the ocean.
We want to give the city the regulatory flexibility to come up with a plan where they can get more water in this time of drought. That's pretty important. So anything that isn't going to that facility that can be shaved off and used as either gray water or even drinking water is something that we're going to look favorably towards.
But before the EPA can make a decision, the San Diego City Council has to approve the idea. That vote will happen on Tuesday. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Drowning is a leading cause of death for children with autism under the age of 14, but Peggy Pico shows us how a San Diego teacher is improving those odds with a new swim program.
For the last 35 years, a record-setting swimmer from Mira Mesa High School has coached, instructed swimmers, and designed aquatic programs for people with special needs. She's the CEO of AquaPro Swim School in Claremont and co-author of the book, Swimming with Autism. My guest, Tammy Anderson-Lee, is also one of just 4 people in the country to be nominated for a National Humanitarian Award. Tammy, welcome to Evening Edition.
Well, thank you for having me.
Why are children with autism at high risk for drowning?
Because they have an inherent sense of, or they don't have an inherent sense of danger. They are fascinated with the water, and that they are flight risk, basically.
As in wandering outside,
yeah.
Maybe. Okay. How are your aquatic classes for special needs adults and children? How do they differ from swim classes for, let's say, other children and adults?
Well, generally we start the kids out on a one-on-one class, and then from there what we do is once they're comfortable in the program, then we integrate them into the regular group classes. But generally the way that we start them off is just small classes with the one-on-one instruction. We use a lot of visuals with the kids with special needs, or any of the kids with special needs.
What are some specific challenges for children who have autism when it comes to learning how to swim?
I would say the challenges would be that sometimes they're just a little uncomfortable in a new novel and new situations. So they may have a behavioral issue. So that sometimes kind of apprehends their swimming, is just because they're a little bit not comfortable being in the water.
That makes me wonder, is there a criteria for enrollment, and how much do these programs cost, and how long do they last?
Okay, so we accept any child with autism, no matter what type of behaviors they have. We've never turned any child away because of behaviors whatsoever. The program is we fundraise through the Autism Society to help the families. It's a 3-month scholarship. The kids come twice a week for a half-hour private swim lesson. And hopefully within that 3-month period that we are able to get some water safety instruction to at least if they were to fall into a pool, that they would be able to turn around, get back, and make themselves safe.
Is there a certain optimal age for teaching people how to swim and teaching special needs kids how to swim?
All children, we start at our swim school as young as 2 months. So the younger the better, and just for all children, it's very imperative that they learn how to swim, especially in San Diego with all the bodies of water that we have and how many people have backyard pools. Even their neighbors have backyard pools, so it's just really important that they're safe in the water.
How did you get involved in developing this program for kids with autism?
I started in 1995-96. One of the swim parents, she had called and she had a daughter with autism, and I didn't even know what autism was at the time, but I did a little research and then I started working with her. Previous to that, I had worked at Children's Hospital in the Easter Seals program, volunteering time down there. So I had experience working with other types of kids with different disabilities, but not specifically autism. So after working with the first child with autism and realizing how great the water was for her and that how she was able to accomplish and learn how to swim, it just kind of sent me down this path where I needed to do more for these kids because drowning is the leading cause of death for kids with autism.
I understand that. And I know you're one of 4 people in the country to be nominated for NASCAR's Betty Jane France Humanitarian Award.
Right.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It comes with a $100,000 award to be donated to a local charity. Correct. If you win this, where will that money go and how will it be spent?
The $100,000 will go directly to the Autism Society in San Diego, which will help benefit our kids locally. It will also, there's a portion of it will be set aside that we will be able to go instruct other swimming teachers across the country how to work with kids with autism and what we have learned so we can save lives across the country more so than just here in San Diego.
And people vote on who wins this award,
right,
correct?
You go to www.nascar.com/award. And then you can vote there every day between now and December 4th.
All right. Well, we do have that link on our webpage and more information about these swim classes at kpbs.org. Tammy Anderson-Lee, good luck and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm Hari Srinivasan on the next NewsHour. How the burn pits to destroy waste in Iraq and Afghanistan still haunt U.S. soldiers. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
San Diego State men's basketball team are ranked 16th in the country with high hopes of making it to the NCAA Final Four this season. The Aztecs face rival Utah at Viejas Arena tomorrow. I sat down with sports writer Jay Paris to talk about the team's prospects this year. Well, Jay, the Aztecs won their home opener on Friday. Why do you think expectations are so high this year for the San Diego State men's basketball team?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is kind of the year everybody's been pointing toward. 5-star recruits and Malik Pope, Dylan Zetham, right down the street here, Trey Kell coming in, Kevin Zabo, Angela Chol, a transfer from Arizona. So this was kind of the big year. Everybody was saying this is going to be our year. Oh, by the way, last year they won 30 games and went to Sweet 16. So the bridge to the future had a lot of the present in it, but that's why everybody's so excited. I mean, San Diego State, they don't rebuild anymore, they reload, and this is another one of those years.
New name, new faces, yet they lost 2 of their biggest stars.
Oh, absolutely. Xavier Thames, he led the team in 6 different categories. And I think when they did take him out, he went up and cheered in the show area. You know, that guy there, he never sat down. And Josh Davis, their big rebounder in the middle. Yeah. So those are 2 key components that are missing. But coming back, Skylar Spencer, you know, the shot blocker, Winston Shepard, Matt Shrigley from the outside. So there's a lot of guys still there with all these newcomers.
And when you talk about the team, what are some of the biggest question marks? You talked about some of the highlights and expectations, but question marks.
Right. Every team has a few, you know, and yeah, I think it's finding that point guard. Xavier was so good at that and so composed and used his head as much as his feet, the way he ran that offense. So right now, Trey Kell, he started the other night at point, freshman point guard. That's hard to do, but that shows you how much faith Coach Fisher has in him. Also, a perimeter shooting's always a question mark. But I think with Angela Troll, they got that big, beefy 220 guy in the middle who can be the enforcer and clear the lanes for the other guys.
Yeah, so good point guard needed. And when you talk about Coach Fisher, though,
right,
in the offseason, he received the probably one of his greatest honors, right?
Right.
The John Wooden
Legacy Coaching Award, and it's you got to have your stripes during this one now. They just don't give this one out. And named, of course, for the iconic UCLA coach. And Coach Fisher, they're similar almost. They're even keeled, they're calm. They're really more teachers than coaches. And a great story is years ago when Coach Wooden was still alive, Fisher went to dinner. He was sitting at Coach Wooden's table. He changed all the nameplates so he could sit next to Coach Wooden, and he'd been in his ear for about an hour and a half.
And now he gets the John Wooden
Yes,
Legacy
he does.
Coaching Award.
Well deserved as well.
Yeah. Jay, good to see you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Go Aztecs.
You got it.
Well, we are going to cool down a bit by the middle of the week with some strong gusty winds expected in the valley and mountain areas. Look for a mix of sun and clouds along the coast over the next couple of days, mostly in the low 70s. A red flag alert for gusty winds and fire danger for the inland valleys. Temperatures there dipping into the upper 60s, as you can see there by Thursday. Strong winds for the mountain areas as well, and cooler. Sunny in the desert, temperatures mostly in the 70s. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.